back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to review two fantasy books that I recently read. I would class them both kind of as YA, although I'm not certain if the authors would put them into that category for definite, but I think the first one is definitely YA, and that is this one, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. The other one that I'm going to be talking about is City of Brass, which is by S.A. Chakraborty. This one is one of the BookTube SFF nominated ones. It's on the debut category, so I was really happy to get to this, and I audiobooked this one. So I'm going to start off by talking about this one. This is definitely not a book that I would classically pick up for myself. It's about fae, and I tend to find that fae stories can be really hit or miss with me, and I don't usually like them. So I was a little unsure when I was sent this from the publisher whether I was going to pick this one up or not, but a couple of you guys said that it was really, really good and you definitely enjoyed it, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a try, I'll see whether I like it or not. And I'm glad I read it for sure, because I definitely did end up liking this book, and it is quite a dark fae story, and those are the ones that I do tend to find I enjoy a lot more than lighter stuff or stuff where they're a bit too sickly sweet. This is not that, this is dark fantasy stuff, and I like that. So we follow two twins. We follow Jude and her sister Tamrin, and then we also follow their older sister who is called Vivi. At the very start of the book they are living together in the mortal world, but quickly their lives are about to change when a fairy shows up at their house, kills their parents and steals them back to the fairy world with him. He actually turns out to be their older sister's real father, so she is half fae, and yet he brings the two twins along as well, even though they are completely human, because he knows that they are related to his daughter, so he wants to raise them. So they end up all going back to the fairy world and living their lives there from the time they're about 8 or 7 years old, I think, up until they're about 16 when this sort of book starts. We're following Jude predominantly. She is our main character, but we do see Vivi and Tamrin sort of show up in the story at various intervals. And Jude is unfortunately a little bit of a feisty character who doesn't really fit so well into the fae world. She likes to defend herself, she has a really strong spirit, and she is really quite competent with a blade as well. She's been in training for most of her life since she got stolen away into fae, and she really enjoys being there. She actually wants to spend her entire life there, and she wants to prove herself so that she is allowed to stay. However, the rest of the people who she lives with are all fairies, and they do not like humans. They really, really don't. So they frequently pick on her, tease her, taunt her, bully her, and are not very nice at all. They do horrible things, and they just continuously want to try and belittle and upset her. And Jude has a hard time sort of sitting back and letting it happen, which is what her twin sister Tamrin does. But she knows that for their sanity, this is probably the best thing to do. However, as the story goes on, we see that the political landscape is changing. The king of the fae is about to switch over to an heir, and he is about to name someone who he wants to be the new heir. And that is kind of going on in the background of the story of Jude and her aggressors. So Jude is quite an interesting character, like I've mentioned, but her sisters were a little lackluster. They didn't feel like they were fleshed out as much to me. There is a queer romance in this, which is really nice to see, and it's a bit of a background to the rest of the story, but I thought it was really solidly done, and I liked that a lot. We also get to see Jude as our main character defying quite a few stereotypes of your standard woman in fantasy, and she definitely sort of stands up for herself, fights against the people who are mean to her. I do think there are some really interesting twists in this story. I saw some things coming, but a couple of them I really didn't, and I was quite surprised by how into it I got in the second half. I think the first half was a bit slower, it was opening up the world and kind of introducing you to the characters, but the second half was definitely more fun and I enjoyed it a lot more as well. It does have some magical elements, of course, being set in fairyland, and we get to see some of the people are part animal, which is pretty cool, but the scheming is definitely the bit I most enjoyed. I do think that this book definitely felt a little bit quick. It didn't feel like it was really fleshing out the world as much as I wanted, and some of the characters I don't feel like I really connected with or got. It was just a quick, light read. I say light in that it didn't take me long to read it, it was quite easy, but it's not exactly a light read. Like, there are some pretty horrible things that happen, so just bear that in mind. But I ended up giving this a solid 3 stars in the end. It was a likeable one, I definitely enjoyed it. I'm intrigued about the next one. I'm not certain I'm going to pick it up, but I am intrigued. Love to hear your thoughts on this one if you guys have read it. What did you think, and will you be picking up the second one? Moving on to the other book I have to talk about, City of Brass. This one I audiobooked, and I definitely think the audiobook narrator was good, so I'd recommend that. This follows 2 characters, this one, although it starts off with our main character who is called Nari, and we follow her in Cairo in Egypt where she grows up. She was an orphan, she doesn't really know where she came from, and we start the story following her as she is running her own shop. She has a good working relationship with the local apothecary, she's got a friend who works there, and she has kind of forged a decent life for herself despite the hard start that she had. So we pick up her story when she is actually about to send 2 marks down to the apothecary to charge the earth for some really rubbishy stuff. She wants to get a bit of money because she's hoping one day to go and study to become a real healer, but she knows that this is quite out of her depth at the moment. She has to save a lot of money to do this and she just doesn't really have it. So how she gets it is by conning people. And we follow her as she does a couple of cons early in the book, and then one of them goes pretty horribly wrong because she ends up speaking in a different language, and this language summons a Djinn, or a genie of some kind, who in this world are called Deva. Alongside Nari's story, we also have the story of Ali, and Ali is the prince of Davabad, which is the land where these sort of genie-type people live and have lived for many hundreds of years. They are separate from humans, they don't really like humans, and they have their own kind of culture and own kind of class divides and problems and various things that go on in Davabad, and he is there in a time where the class divide is pretty bad. His father hasn't really done an awful lot about it, and he sees lots of problems with the divide between the poor and the rich, the commoners and the wealthy and the noble, and he wants to help. So he has been funding on the side this secret kind of sect who are helping the commoners, and he doesn't really know what his money's being used for, but he hopes it's being used for good things. Of course it's not, and he quickly learns this and realises just how much trouble he's going to be in if anyone finds out that he was helping, and of course this is where his story starts to get complicated. So these are our 2 main characters. One has summoned a genie by accident and the other one is involved in a scheme by accident. They're both a little bit naive at the start of the story, but as it goes on we do see them develop and kind of grow and understand a bit more about their culture and their world and how it all fits together. Later in the book, the 2 of them do actually end up meeting for various reasons, and we see a lot more magic once the 2 of them are both in Davabad. So what I liked about this was that it is completely filled to the brim with magic. Just the very fact that the genie is summoned and that the genie is working in the story is quite fun, and I really liked it. We also have a character called Ali, and I just could not help but think of Aladdin because, I mean, you've got a genie, you've got Ali, and it's just Aladdin, guys. It's Aladdin. But what this is not Aladdin. It's quite different. It feels like it's completely unique. It has a desert-based setting, and it certainly has some really fun ideas playing with the magic and sort of testing what the magic can do. There's sort of these shadowy, demon-y things that are trying to attack at various points. There's possibly undead gods that are in the background. There's a lot of stuff to be kind of getting on with and learning about, and we also see Nari as she learns a bit more about her own personal magic and how she can become a healer in true reality to the Devas. So there's an awful lot that happens over the course of the story, and it's definitely a bit twisty and turny. There is some romance as the story goes on, and I do think it was a bit of a predictable one. But with that being said, I still really enjoyed it, and I found myself just completely absorbed in the narration of this one whilst I was listening to it. There's a lot to like, and it's fast-paced, it's interesting, but it still allows time for the characters to grow, and we see them grow and develop alongside the world, which is fleshed out and just feels very fantastical. It is fast, but it is fun, and I definitely enjoyed myself whilst reading this one, and I'm certainly intrigued about where the next one's going to go based off of the ending of this, which was very climactic and very full of surprises. So I ended up giving this one a solid 4.5 stars, which is really, really good for me, and I just think it's one that a lot of you will love. So I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have read it or if you plan to. Thank you all so much for watching. Do leave me your comments, and I'll see you very soon in another video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.